I bought my farm for the peace and quiet, a place where the only traffic I had to deal with was a deer lazily crossing my gravel path. It was perfect, peaceful, open, and mine. That peace lasted exactly 1 year, until the neighbors from over the hill started getting clever. They found a little side trail, a rough dirt path utility trucks had used once, and decided it was their shortcut. It wasn't even a real road, but soon word spread. Now I was watching sedans, pickup trucks, even golf carts, cruising through like it was some Sunday morning joyride. Welcome to Prodigy Chronicles. Hit like and subscribe for your weekly dose of top-tier HOA drama. Now, the worst offender, Karen, the queen of the HOA. She'd come flying through my property in a neon yellow Lamborghini Urus, like she owned the land. One day I finally flagged her down. "Hey," I said, calm but firm. "This isn't a public road. I need you and your HOA members to stop cutting through." She cracked her window just enough to toss attitude. "Oh, please," she smirked, sliding her sunglasses up. "We've been driving through here for months. Little late to change that now, don't you think?" "I don't think so," I replied. She tilted her head and said, "What are you gonna do? Arrest us?" Then she hit the gas, spraying a wave of dust all over my freshly seeded ryegrass. I didn't react, not at first. Instead, I went with the polite route. No trespassing signs. Private property warnings. Clean, visible, respectful. Within a week, 2 signs were knocked down. One was literally being used as a wheel chock for some kid's dirt bike. And then I found an HOA board member just sitting, idling, in the middle of my land, sipping an iced latte like it was a coffee shop parking lot. I reminded him, again. He just laughed. "Come on, man. It's just a shortcut." Yeah, a shortcut to them. But to me, it was my home, my soil, my responsibility. The constant tire ruts were damaging the ground, spooking my livestock. And to make it worse, my insurance guy warned me, if someone gets hurt out there, you could be liable. That's when it hit me. Polite doesn't work with people who don't believe rules apply to them. So I decided to speak a language Karen would understand. Gravity. First, I parked an old flatbed truck across the trail. She drove around it, through my orchard. Then, I strung a bright red plastic chain with flags. 2 days later, someone cut it and threw the pieces into my irrigation ditch. I tried a motion-activated camera to capture license plates. They spray-painted the lens. I even set up fake construction cones. Karen? She plowed right through them and waved at the camera I'd just replaced. That's when I called my insurance adjuster and asked a totally hypothetical question. If I were to dig a trench, a clearly marked unused section of my own land, not a road, not an easement, and put up warning signs, would I be liable? He said, "As long as it's your property, not a marked road, and the hazard is visible, you're within your rights." I waited for the rain. The forecast called for a wet weekend, and that Saturday morning I got to work. The trench wasn't deep, just enough to stop a low-clearance vehicle in its tracks. 3 feet deep, 5 feet wide. Right across the path. I marked the edges with tall, bright orange stakes, posted a weatherproof sign that read, "Private land, trespass at your own risk. Not a public road." Then came the final touch. I laid a plastic tarp inside the trench and lightly camouflaged it with straw, just enough to mask the depth. No traps, no tricks. Just a visible obstacle that any reasonable driver would have stopped and considered. And as a courtesy, I sent one last email to the HOA board. Subject line: Final notice, illegal shortcut use. Inside, a calm explanation that due to damage and liability, the trail was now officially closed, unsafe for vehicles. Proceed at your own risk. Karen didn't respond, but the very next morning, I saw tire tracks in the mud again. That was the moment I stopped thinking in terms of fairness and started thinking in terms of boundaries. As I stared down at the fresh treads slicing through my soaked field, I realized something. Karen wasn't going to stop until something stopped her, and that something was already waiting. It was Tuesday afternoon. The sky was heavy with clouds. The kind that threaten rain but never quite deliver. The ground was soft, slick, perfect. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee from a thermos, watching the ridgeline like a sentry. By now, I'd learned to recognize the sound of engines, especially hers. Because let's be honest, a Lamborghini Urus isn't exactly subtle. And right on cue. I heard it. That deep, aggressive growl of a twin-turbo V8 echoing through the trees like a dare. She came flying over the hill, tires flinging mud, headlights blazing, still thinking the world would part for her. But this time it didn't. She hit the trench at full speed, at least 25 miles per hour. The front wheels dropped in first. Wham! The nose slammed down hard, then the rear lifted like a seesaw. Thud! And just like that, the Urus was stuck, angled, hissing. Steam poured from somewhere underneath. And for a full 10 seconds, nothing moved. Just silence. And smoke. Then, bam! The driver's door flew open. Karen climbed out, staring at her car like reality had slapped her in the face. Her designer boots sank into the mud as she stomped around, screaming into her phone, confused, furious, helpless. And me? I stayed right there, sipping my coffee, watching. About 40 minutes later, a tow truck showed up. The driver stepped out, looked at the scene, and just whistled. Damn, that's gonna cost a fortune. As they tried to pull the Urus out, I heard the horrible crunch of metal on metal. The undercarriage scraped. An exhaust pipe bent sideways. The suspension looked cooked. Even the tow driver winced. Karen? She just screamed. Me? I smiled. Not out of revenge, but because someone had finally hit a boundary they couldn't ignore, or threaten their way past. As the tow truck dragged the once glorious Lamborghini out of the mud, dented, dripping, defeated, Karen turned and saw me. I raised my thermos, gave her a little nod. She didn't say a word, just glared, humiliated, furious, and speckled in the mud of her own arrogance. The next day, I braced for retaliation, a lawsuit threat. HOA goons with clipboards. Something. But instead, there was silence. Not the peaceful kind you enjoy. The kind that comes when someone finally realizes they lost. But this silence, it wasn't peace. It was the kind that builds up, like pressure in a pipe, ready to burst. By Thursday, a thick envelope landed in my mailbox. Official HOA stationery, all caps, pages full of legal jargon demanding clarification on the obstruction I'd placed on a commonly used route. I replied with exactly one sentence. The route in question is private property, never granted as an easement, and clearly marked as closed. Then I attached everything. High-res photos, GPS overlays, boundary surveys, timestamps, warning emails, and, of course, a glorious picture of the bright yellow Lamborghini Urus, sunk like a luxury yacht in a muddy trench. Karen climbing out, drenched in humiliation. That reply must have struck the right nerve. Because by Monday, the HOA went completely silent. Not a single car rolled through. The shortcut, dead. As for Karen, she never crossed my land again. Now and then, I'd see her car, crawling along the long, paved road around the hill, trapped in traffic like every other regular peasant. I heard whispers. Apparently the dealership refused to cover the damage. Something about owner negligence. Rumor had it. Just the suspension alone cost over $20,000. The underbody work? Even more. And Karen, once the queen of shortcuts and smug smirks, now quietly avoided eye contact whenever we crossed paths. She never apologized, never admitted fault. But I didn't need her to, because her silence, the rerouted detour, the overgrown trail that no one dared use anymore, that was enough. One quiet afternoon, I was out fixing a fence post when I spotted her again, driving slowly along the far road, her eyes drifting toward the now abandoned trail. She didn't stop, didn't hesitate, just drove on, pretending it was never there. And me? I tipped my hat to the ditch. It had done its job well. Because sometimes the best fences aren't made of wood or wire. Sometimes they're 3 feet deep, 5 feet wide, and built with nothing but a shovel and a point to prove. If you enjoyed this showdown, like and subscribe for more epic HOA drama. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Let us know in the comments below.